Hello, YouTubers. This is a video response to Sword of Allah's piece called "Was Prophet Muhammad a Pedophile?" And frankly, I think he's got the right idea here. We are tending, most of us who have seen these things, most of those who have responded anyway to all of these allegations about Muhammad being a pedophile, are responding emotionally, and they're responding based on what they consider moral today. Now, we should start by taking a look at the word moral. Moral comes from mor in Latin, which means custom. And ethics also comes from ethos, the Greek word for, you guessed it, custom. What is moral? What is moral? Morality is based on custom. It's based on what is generally accepted in the society in which you live. That's one of the arguments that I will also use to say that atheists can be perfectly moral without having to have a belief in God or the Bible or the Quran or any other book, because morality is derived from custom. Now let's go back to the 7th century. At that time, it was considered customary that a young female was able to start procreating at the time of her first menses. That is, puberty. Puberty may or may not begin as early as 9 years old in some females. Usually it's a little later than that. But if Aisha, for example, were already showing signs of menses at the time of her 9th birthday, at that time it was perfectly reasonable, rational, and moral that her husband, and Muhammad was her husband from her age of 6, should then consummate the marriage. He was not a dirty old man. He was just a person of his time, helping to propagate a people whom he hoped would become the leaders of the world in his religion. You have to consider that the population of the whole planet in those days was not as it is now. We seem to believe that most of our world now is overpopulated, but it was not so back then. And before you get the idea that Muhammad was way out of line, consider that Mary, the mother of Jesus, was, according to a lot of people, very likely to have been no more than 13, possibly as young as 12, when Jesus was born. This was not unusual, abnormal, or immoral in her time. And I'll tell you that Sword of Allah has pointed out that in the last century, I should say the 19th century, I'm still thinking in 20th century terms here, sorry about that, but that in the 19th century in America, in most places, it was considered perfectly natural that a female should be married by the time she was into puberty. Again, it was a very logical thing because it was necessary to build the population. I know most of my ancestors had very large families, and some of them began pretty early. Let me put it to you this way. My father's mother was only 16 when she bore him, and she had already had a stillbirth before that, meaning that her husband, who was actually quite a bit older than she, had impregnated her the first time when she was maybe as young as 14. Do you think that was immoral? I'm not about to call my grandfather a pedophile, and I don't want you to either. Actually, he was just behaving as other men of his time and place did. And my grandmother, by the way, lived to be only 36. She bore 6 children, and she wore herself completely out because that was also quite common, sadly. We've changed a little bit. We have different ideals now and different views of how things should be. But using an inflammatory term like pedophile to describe Muhammad is no more accurate than, I would say, calling my grandfather a pedophile for having sex with a 15 or earlier year old girl. It was perfectly okay in his community at his time. And it was moral by the very definition of the word. It was ethical by the very definition of the word. Now, I have issues with other things, Islamic and Christian, and mostly for the same reasons. But on this issue, I have to disagree with all of the people who say that Muhammad must have been a wicked, nasty, dirty old man because he had sex with a 9-year-old girl. That's it. You certainly are welcome to post your comments to me, and I'll read them. I may even respond to a few of them, but I pretty much said how I think about this, so don't feel too badly if I don't respond.